Hey,
Patrick.
Gavin.
What's up, man?
Hey, man. Good to see you. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks.
Come
Thanks
on
so
in.
much. Man, it's so good to be back. It's been a couple years at least since I was here. We were doing some final testing, but
yeah, now we're all finished. Everything's constructed.
that's awesome. Yeah, show us around.
All right, let's start.
Patrick, Marnie, thanks for sitting down with us and talking in this beautiful studio you guys have.
Thanks for coming all the way to Washington.
Tell us a little bit about your history musically and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, we met playing music together. And
then we started Brooklyn Duo, our group, about...
after we got married.
Yeah, after we got married.
9 years ago.
9 years ago now, yeah.
Typically classical musicians they're a little bit more reserved and a little bit more picky on what they play, primarily classical music. And we were like, let's play all the music that we love, music that we grew up with. And so we just dove in and we went to a recording studio and recorded like 3 songs, I think. And one of them was a Shakira cover, and somebody and Shakira's team or Shakira herself or something happened and she found the video and shared it to 100 million people. I don't even know how she found it because there were like
no
views. I think from the get-go we were like, okay, we're on to something.
Yeah.
Like if people are taking notice. And like 6 months later, Taylor Swift did the same thing. We're like, oh man, this is crazy. So this in here is kind of like our lounge area. So when we're not making music or sometimes we're on our laptops and it's a kind of a fun place to hang out. This was all kind of open. We didn't have an upstairs actually before. It was like this little crawl space. And so we put in a staircase here and we have an office up there where we get some work done.
When I was here last too, I don't think any of the artwork was done. These are really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Where'd you get those at?
Yeah, this is actually from an artist up in Vancouver. Her name is Pat O'Hara, and she does really cool work. Actually, you can see on the her art here, she uses strings to make, the kind of this line pattern. And little known fact, both a cello and piano have
Both
strings.
have strings.
So it kind of ties in.
Tying it all together. I love it.
We started the group when we were living in Brooklyn, so that's why the name. And then we quickly moved to New Jersey. We didn't change our name. People always thought that in our videos we were in this big apartment in Brooklyn, but it was our New Jersey house in the country.
Out in the middle of the country.
Yeah. And then now we live in Bellingham, in Washington.
But Marnie grew up in Vancouver, Canada, which is, we're actually closer to Vancouver, Canada than we are to Seattle.
Yeah.
So you're a Pacific Northwest girl.
I had spent long enough in New Jersey. I thought, time to come back to the West Coast. So that's why we came back 3 years ago now.
I lived on the East Coast my whole life, but definitely it feels like home now. You can't beat the beauty of the mountains and the water. And
he loves to bike, and so there's a lot of good biking here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to live.
All right, so let's go into the studio.
All right, sounds good. Come on in.
Most people would do a lot to have this much square footage and the ceiling height that you guys have.
Yeah, well, actually, when we picked this space, we were looking for something initially like a house. We wanted something that looked kind of residential. I think people connect with our music in an intimate way where it's like they're not seeing something in a studio. They're seeing something, performed live from a living room or something like that. And we stumbled upon this condo. We walked in and we have 17-foot ceilings and these big windows, with all this light, natural light in there. It worked really well for us too. Classical music is generally recorded in halls,
right,
in big spaces, and so you're kind of sacrificing a little bit going into a small studio room. So there's a nice balance. We've got tall ceilings, plenty of room for the sound to ring, and that was kind of the reason why we said, okay, this is the spot. So we bought it. Before we had talked to anybody like
about treating it for a studio.
And so we needed somebody who really knew a lot about, acoustic engineering. So we went to the kind of the top firms that we could find, you included, and generally the feedback that we got off the bat was like,
you should
sell the unit. Like, it's not a good place to put a studio, which is, all these things are true. But when we, started talking with you, it was a much more open, decision of, okay, you make this kind of music and you want to do this, and let's explore and see if we can make this work. But then also, obviously, we found you mainly because of the look of studios that you'd already designed. Crowder studio that you did, they put together such a beautiful space, and we love we
like the white and the modern, not just like a bunch of panels on the wall that you can see.
So it was just a perfect fit, and right off the bat, we knew, okay, we want to work with people who are going to be really open-minded about what we're trying to do and really help us make it work, and we've succeeded.
This new space, you're able to do everything in here. You can mix and master in here if you'd like to, but you also perform. I know we talked originally about you might have 2 rooms versus just one big room, and I guess how's the room working out for you?
Well, it was definitely the right move going with one room, especially since, we both are involved in everything. So like from, performing, sure, but then like all of the production and all of the engineering side of things. And so like I've always run all of our recording and setting up mics and doing all the engineering and everything. And if it were a 2-room studio, I'd be like running back and forth like a chicken,
It would be different if like you were recording other people all the time and you needed to be quiet. You would have to be in another room, but since we do it ourselves, it's way easier like this. And we could get a bigger room, so we love it.
And it's the perfect size too. I mean, it's just a few steps to walk over to the desk, but it still has like, the sort of these tall ceilings and a lot of sonic, air space to use up. So we couldn't ask for a better room.
I think when we first started talking, you were in the process of building a kind of fake room within a room, like a really small version of what we plan to do on the full thing, just to be able to test it out and be able to talk with your neighbors and make sure that things weren't too disturbing. So,
thanks to you, we used the right materials. If you put them in the wrong order, that's what I learned throughout the process is you can use the right material and just put them in the wrong order or not have enough material. So building that test room was really helpful because it failed the first time and we had to beef it up, and then we said, okay, let's tear this thing down and build the real thing.
We did a lot of simulations with the different wall structures of try to predict our SDC levels and transmission loss levels and just get it to a point where it felt good. Because it's a daunting task. I mean, when you start to construct something like this, like it's got to work. It's not something where you build it all and say, all right,
let's try again.
What? Yeah, let's try again. Let's tear it all down and do it again. But it's a full room within a room where we have a floated floor. You actually step up to get into this room, and there's a lot of different types of materials, because that's the thing with isolation is the more mass you have and the more decoupling that you have, like vibration control is going to give you good results. And sometimes just different types of materials within that system makes a big difference. So this floated floor, the walls of the room rest on top of the floated floor, and then the ceiling rests on the walls. So there's nothing actually physically touching the building except for the floor itself, which has decoupling in it. I know you had done some research already on what might need to be done, and that's always a good thing to kind of know what you're up against before you even get into it.
Yeah, for sure. It ended up being a lot more complicated than we thought, I think. But we had to have an engineer kind of check out because the amount of actual mass we were adding to this room was crazy.
We had to make sure that the floor could actually hold it, or it wouldn't.
Exactly,
it
for the
wasn't
whole
too heavy
space.
for the building.
Yeah, so it didn't fall over. I always, since day one, I think our concern was like, let's prevent sound from getting out and impacting other people. We weren't as worried about sound coming in, but we can't hear anything out, and they can't hear anything downstairs, which was our goal. But actually, funny story, when we first bought this space, we went downstairs and, I had to break news to the tenant downstairs that we're putting in recording studio. Of course, he's an acupuncturist, he needs a quiet space. So I meet this guy, and, I'm telling him, hey, we're going to put a recording studio upstairs, but it's not going to be, super loud music. We don't play, drums or, full band. It's going to be mainly classical instruments. And he has like a, music system going on in his office down there. And as I'm telling him the story, one of our tracks comes up over the radio, I swear. And I was like, actually, you're playing our music right now, and this is what it's gonna be like. He was
Yeah.
like, you mean like you make music like
It's
this?
similar,
And I was
right.
like, no, this is our music. And he was like, I don't believe it. He pulls out his phone because he's streaming from his phone. And it's like a picture of my face, and he's
Yeah.
like, oh my god.
That's awesome. Well, that's probably comforting for him because, like, if it does leak through, it's similar to what
Yeah,
he's playing
just
anyway.
turn your radio off.
Right.
And there were a number of things that came up throughout the whole thing. Like, we had built a test room, but there are trusses that are going through the space that we wanted to keep. They're running through the space, and we wanted them visually there. We either had to box them off or have them exposed, but that was a whole nother hurdle,
Yeah.
because we had to figure out, okay, now we've got, you know, one beam of wood that we had to figure out to isolate, and, you know, being able to lift pillars and like put isolation at every, I mean, we had more questions than you were expecting from,
Yeah, well,
from your new client.
You know, it's great because when it comes to isolation, it's like no question's too small. Because sometimes it just can take a screw in the wrong place, one or two screws, and then you've short-circuited this vibration path that causes an issue. And so I'm pro questions. So the more questions you can throw at us, the better.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely.
the natural light is just awesome in the space, and we had to do quite a bit to isolate them. Normal exterior windows are going to leak a lot of sound in here, and if someone has a you know, a loud car or anything going by, we want to make sure that didn't get on your recording. So we ended up doing additional windows on top of those existing windows.
It's such an old building that it's on the historical registry.
Yeah.
So we couldn't remove the existing windows. So that's why we went with this kind of double window type of thing. But this is the, you know, old building. Of course, you have this, you know, gap in between the two, and
Yeah.
then you close this thing, and the sound just kind of like sucks out.
Yeah. And those from soundproof windows is where we got those.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, from soundproof windows, and actually they're not windows; they're doors.
Yes, that's
They're
right. Yeah, we did the
sliding
slider
doors.
doors. They also did the window leading into the space, right?
Yep, they did all the doors and windows in this space, including the 500-pound door that was probably heavier to get into the space than our
Oh yeah, because
grand
there's no
piano.
elevator. It's all stairs.
Yep, yeah.
You're only as good as your weak link in these isolation systems, so you don't want to build an amazing wall and then put a cheap door in there, because then you've spent too much money on a wall.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oscar did a lot of the renderings, and that's kind of when it becomes fun. You know, you isolate the room and you're doing all these things, and it's like, yeah, that's necessary, but it's not exciting because a lot of the stuff is just hidden behind walls. But tell me a little bit about when you saw the first renderings, like what that was for you guys.
I mean, the renderings were so important, I think, to
Yeah.
be able to see, you know, all these ideas thrown out, and like, you know, we were the worst. Like you'd be like, hey, do you like this? And we're like, no. And then you're like, do you like this? And we're like, kinda, but we're not sure.
We're not sure. We just weren't sure what we wanted.
Yeah, but we kind of like slowly, you know, got different elements, and then, you know, like kind of got the front of the room. Once that sort of those decisions were made, everything tied in really nicely. But
The back of the room was easy because we wanted it to just look like a living room or just be nondescript, and so that the focus was more you guys playing. And I know we even talked about potentially doing like a fireplace in here.
Oh, yeah,
remember
that's
we were
right,
doing that?
yeah.
We did a lot of revisions of this front part of the room. Like we tried a lot of different things. Like we wanted to look modern and sleek, but we also wanted to have some interest on this front wall with that kind of pattern of it coming. It's what we arrived at is this kind of sawtooth pattern almost on the front wall, but the side walls were always just a stumper for us. We were just like, well, we have to like draw the eye in here, and I don't want it just to be completely you know, just fabric. And so I actually thought of this in the shower of all places. For some reason, I just like, what if we did a stair-step pattern where the thickness of the treatment got smaller and smaller as we went up, and then we ran LED lights in this channel system. Nothing felt right until that happened. Like as soon as that happened, everything got
tied in.
kind of tied in.
what's really cool about this cloud, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but given kind of the shape of it, it almost looks like a concert hall. Like
It
you know
does.
how paneling in a concert hall sort of draws you into the music, and even though the music's on the other side of the room, you know, it really has that vibe. I think it's so cool that if you turn this way, you know, it looks like an intimate space where you could make music, and you turn this way, it looks like a spaceship.
So all the treatment was done by Matt Call with Simplified Acoustics, and they did all of the stretch fabric systems, applying the acoustical treatment. And if you didn't know, I mean, walk in here, you might think it was just like painted drywall, but it's all fabric, and behind there we specifically placed different types of acoustical elements. So some of them are absorption, some diffusion, and wanted to make sure that it was a controlled but lively area back here. These ceiling clouds are about 6 inches deep, but they have wood slats over the front of them, and then they're filled with insulation, so they're a bass trap, plus they help to bring energy back down to the room, which is great. This ceiling cloud's a big visual element to the room, but it also is functional because it's taking care of first reflection points and then helping with floor-to-ceiling axial modes, all the fun stuff there. And then we've got stretched fabric towards the front here and kind of more of a stair-step pattern with LED lights built in.
And for us, the result is that we have this room that kind of crosses that barrier between a dry recording studio and performing in a concert hall like most classical musicians are used to. And so it's this nice balance of this relatively lively room that just sounds great wherever you put a microphone.
Yeah.
And it looks great too. Listening to our older recordings from our previous space, you can hear immediately, when we made this move to this studio, there's just such a big difference in the sound quality. And what's cool is that we were actually using pretty much the same equipment. I mean, there's a few changes here and there, but as far as the microphones and the preamps and all that, kind of our core setup has stayed the same. But you can just hear, as soon as you go into a better room, it's a massive difference.
And you guys use all Earthworks microphones, right?
So we use these QTC 50s, I think they are. They're Omni microphones, super big frequency range, and they work really well for capturing pretty much anything. We also use their SR30s or their cardioid microphones. And then of course their piano mic system. This thing is awesome because it just goes right into the piano. For us on video, it's nice to have something that's a little bit more subtle.
Sure.
But also they sound super clear, super transparent.
And then tell a little bit about the piano.
We love this piano. Marnie picked it out when we were in New York. We had tried a bunch of pianos. Marnie's always kind of stuck with Steinway. Being a classical pianist, Steinway's kind of the way to go. And a Model B is actually a perfect piano for a room this size. It's called a Parlor Grand, I think. Henry Ziegler Steinway, if I'm saying that right, he was the last living Steinway name owner of the company. And so they made a series of pianos for his birthday, and it has his his initials in here. Just a really beautiful piano. It looks like an early 1900 piano. So they designed it, you can see the leg design on the bottom and the way they did these kind of like little intricate things. It looks like an old piano, but it's actually quite new. And he even signed the inside, which is kind of cool. He's got his autograph in there.
When I was looking to buy this piano and I was trying all different pianos, the room I tried it in was like really, do you remember? It was a huge like New York City apartment, and it was very live, like bare floors and high ceilings. And so I loved the sound of the piano. And then when we brought it home to our house in New Jersey and we treated that room as our recording studio, it was so dead. And I didn't like playing in there. Like it was just
I had done all the treatment
sounded
myself.
So different. Now it's finally like sounding like how I originally played it, because you can hear it more, it's brighter, and it's just, this is the perfect room for it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can see we have these beautiful Focal monitors. That was kind of one of our big upgrades moving into the studio. We needed a monitor that was suitable for a larger room.
We've done quite a few studios with the Trio 11s in them, and just every one of them turns out amazing. Obviously, you have to have a good room for things to sound its best, but when you start off with a speaker of that quality, it's hard to mess up. So.
Yeah, for sure. No, we love them. And of course, we had to go with the Focal Sub 2, which actually that was an interesting story. I don't know if you remember, but we had designed the whole room, and everything came, and it turned out how we expected it. Reading wise, but there was an issue with the sub, right? With the bass frequencies.
Yeah, placement of the sub and dialing in settings and all that really goes a long way to make sure that the monitoring setup is as good as possible.
And we love the way that everything sounds here. I know that what's coming from the speakers is exactly, what's there. And that's a comforting thing. In our music, a lot of times what I have to do, especially with like string instruments, you have a lot of these like sort of natural peaks in the frequency spectrum. So I have to do a lot of really intricate EQ work to be able to get the cello to sound, natural, or other instruments too. And so knowing that, okay, this is exactly what I'm hearing, and that the room's not coloring that, makes my life so much easier. Where we had a studio previously, it was like a makeshift studio, and I had put a bunch of panels, and I think I did a decent enough job.
Sure.
But it still wasn't a perfect room, and so I was running into that issue where I'd either cut something and then I'd listen back in the car and, it wasn't, it was still there, or it was or it wasn't even an issue in the first place. So now at least I know, okay, I can trust it.
When you guys are in here, you want to be quick and efficient with things. And if you're constantly wondering whether or not it's going to translate, or, hey, I remember last time I did this, it didn't work out so well. Like, if you're worrying about those issues, and you're not spending that energy being creative. And so I think it's really nice that you have a mixed environment that can do that for you.
Yeah, for sure.
What other kind of gear do you use?
Our chain, actually, we keep things really simple. We don't have a big console. We actually only have 8 main inputs, because most of what we're recording is chamber music. It's smaller ensembles. And so as a result, we really kind of spend a lot of time making sure that these 8 channels are super good. And so we use Apogee Symphony for conversion. And over here we have Millennia Pre's. I don't know if you're familiar with Millennia, but they do a lot of classical music. It's, again, super transparent and pair really nice with the Earthworks. And then I really love these Phoenix Pre's. I use it for my Neumann M149. It's a nice big tube microphone, which for my cello, it just always kind of sounds really nice. And then we've got Vintech. They're, again, super clear signals and really nice. And we have a Syntech at the bottom for if we have extra room mics. We also have these Avid sort of digital consoles. At first, when we were designing this, I was thinking maybe we should go with an analog console. But I think given that there's only a handful of inputs in this room, we decided on something a little bit more simple. And what's really cool about these units is that they talk to the iPads here. So while I'm recording, I can actually unplug this thing and bring it over, and then I can control all the recording controls and all the engineering from my seat where I'm playing cello. So it works out really well for a studio like this.
That's awesome. What other setups have you had in the space?
Well, we've invited a few guest artists. So we work a lot with the Dover Quartet, famous string quartet in the classical realm.
Yep.
We have all these setups. Like we have, I don't know if you saw these beams. What's really nice about them is you can hang lighting from them. You can do all this stuff in this room, so that once you have that all set, there's very little that I have to do as a video guy and a sound engineer and all that.
Didn't we add these additional pieces that went off to the side?
Yeah, and we added those, I think, partially to kind of increase that beam look, so it wasn't just one beam running through, but they're also great because we have electrical running to each beam, and we can mount lights up there. We can, hang chandeliers from it. When we have more musicians that we invite to the studio, a lot of times we need, more than just 3 or 4 mics. And so we have these XLR boxes, actually one on either side of the room. We had those put in, when everything was being constructed, and it's nice to have the ability to sort of, plug in a microphone anywhere we want in the room, but still be out of the way.
I remember when we were doing that too. It's like how to get some mic plates over here without it being, running things right in front of the doorway and being a tripping hazard and everything like that. So it's nice to run that behind the
and while it's a big room, sometimes it feels small once you start getting a lot of people in here, so you don't want cables running everywhere. So one thing that's really cool about building a space sort of from scratch, so you can make everything really smart, and so that was kind of my little thing, is I wanted every single light to be connected to like a sort of a smart home type of thing, and worked out really well. So like our blinds, they come down automatically, which is really cool. And we have, these LED lights that were installed with, different colors. So you can really, have all these like different codes for different presses on it, all these things that do different things.
Oh, yeah.
But you can really kind of make it vibey in here and to match the tone of sort of what you're going for.
thank you guys so much for allowing us to come in here and just document this beautiful space. You guys are some of my favorite clients ever. You know, you're super fun to work with, and just I like-minded, creative people that we're able to collaborate with. So thank you again for having us.
Oh, and
Thank
Gavin,
you for this space.
Yeah, this is a dream studio for us, and we got here because of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. All right, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Take care. No, that's weird. That's weird. It got awkward.
Okay, take care.
Take care. All right,
No,
take
there
care.
was a cut point before there that worked. There was
there
a
a
cut
cut
point
point?
before.
Dang it.
Appreciate
I
it.
ended it like a phone call.
Take care. Click.